Hello there, and you're very welcome to another episode of the Arkham Avengers FFPL podcast. You join me, the host, along with Eamon, Hector, and Captain Fantastic on me, where we take a look to see how the managers in this league are getting on for the season. However, we'll also be talking about much more. So kick back, stay tuned, and enjoy. Hello. Well, we had a great response to last week's episode, and I can't wait to find out what's in store this week. Eamon and Hector join me, of course. Lads, you survived Storm Debbie, I take it?
Well, I did. I'm here in the studio, so of course I survived it. It certainly was blowing a bit of a gale on Monday. Thankfully, there was no damage, though, done around my place. Everything was fine.
Hector, you survived also.
I did, yes. And I could not get back to sleep. It was howling like mad. And then the electricity went off and did not come back until later on the Monday evening. And it was that windy. I thought at one moment the window was going to get blown in. It was rough now where I was.
It sounds like it was rough there with you, Hector. But of course, I suppose you're over more in a westerly direction there, so you're going to get the brunt of it as such there.
I had to say to one of my friends, I think if there were any dogs that were left out, and I hope there were none, that they would be winding up in the Kansas place there. And, a bit like the Wizard of Oz sort of thing. And there were lots of trees and branches on the roads. They were all knocked down. I have to say, he was kind of rough, so it was.
Hector.
Yes.
You last week happened to mention about Raglan Road doing a recitation for us.
I did, yes. I thought there might be time for them to do something for us.
Well, you'll be pleased to hear that Raglan hasn't let you down. They have sent in a little piece, probably that ties in nicely with the story you were telling us about when it came to that person with the chainsaw who was chasing you on Halloween night.
Please, you have to mention that again. I'm trying to put that behind me.
Not to worry. I think you will enjoy this here now.
I see. Is this a recitation about the Eamon and me, Hector? He says story about us?
No, not so much about the two of you now. It's rather about a gentleman called Ned McCann and his wife, Mary Ann. It also includes a calf and a chainsaw.
Did you say a calf?
I did indeed say a calf.
What sort of a recitation is this that you've got a calf? And you said a chainsaw as well.
Indeed I did.
Eamon, I don't know what sort of thing this could be. This might be scary.
Well, look, I think that we should play the little clip that Raglan sent in to us and let Raglan tell us the story about this. Okay, so roll it there, Frank, and we're going to have a listen to it right now.
Wee Ned McCann, he settled down to a life of work and tended to his piece of land. Mary Ann kept the house and helped outside, for she was good as any man. It was 86, I do recall. The summer was awful bad. The hay was rotten, the turf was lost. Mary Ann was raving mad. For she had to part with money for coal and hay, and the winter was coming on. The stock was starving, the house was freezing. Something would have to be done. They had a few acres of timber at the back of the hill, alder, beech and ash. If they could get them cut, they'd make ideal firewood and save a bit of cash. But Ned wasn't fit, for he had a pain in his back and could hardly lift a straw. So after much debate, Mary Ann decided to buy a wee chainsaw. She got the nephew up from Crossbit Glen to cut and chop the wood. That had a damn good fire, and wee Ned got peace. Things now were looking good. But one frosty morning when Ned went out to give the calves a handful of meal, a fine bull calf was laying dead, one that was nearly ready for sale. Starvation, no doubt, was the cause of death. The neighbours mustn't know. You may get your spade, says Mary Ann, and dig a grave right now. So Ned dug a hole as near as he could to the body of the calf. But when he hit a big stone, he left down the spade, saying, I think it's deep enough. He needed a hand to bury the beast, so he gave Mary Ann a shout. Then they rolled the carcass into the hole, but its 4 legs were sticking out. So there they were with a calf half buried, and a grave that was too wee, and they couldn't leave it with its legs stuck out for all the neighbours to see. So after a bit of thought, Mary Ann pipes up, I'll tell you what we'll do. Go up to the house and get the chainsaw, and we'll cut the legs in two. So they cut off the legs and covered all up with plenty of sods and stone, and hoped and prayed as long as they lived, no one would find out what they had done. Now, Shamey Morgan was a neighbour man, and always game for a laugh. He met Packy Campbell at Fellamy's shop, who told him about Ned's calf. A few nights later, a plan was hatched in Henry McCaffrey's bar to relieve wee Ned of his new chainsaw and to give them a bit of a scare. So, one showery evening at the edge of dark, there came a knock on wee Ned's door, and standing there was a man in black, the Cruelty Man for sure. Oh, Mother of God, says Ned to himself, they've heard about the calf. I'll be up in court. I'll go to jail. The neighbours will have some laugh. Good evening, sir, says the man in black. Are you Mr. Ned McCann? I suppose I am, stumbled Ned. And this is Mary Ann. For she was standing beside him with her sleeves rolled up and a look as bold as brass. Get down that lane as fast as you can before I stick the grape up your arse. No violence, please. I'm the Cruelty Man, and I've come about the calf. A complaint was made by a neighbour man that his legs were cut clean off. But the calf was dead, squealed Mary Ann. Wee Ned, he did his best. Dead or alive, said the Cruelty Man, you can't cut the legs of a beast. Then out of the shadows, another boy appears and starts to question Ned. Was he buying hay or fattening meal, or were the cattle badly fed? They're fed of the best, chirps Mary Ann, but the meal is very dear. Starvation is a crime, said the Cruelty Man. The law is very clear. It's 6 months in jail or a hefty fine for letting an animal die. But mutilation is a serious crime, and the penalty is extremely high. So the chainsaw we need for forensic tests, and the spade you used also, they'll be sent away for examination. For how long, it's hard to know. We'll do our best, says the taller one, to mitigate the cost, and after a couple of weeks you'll know the worst. You'll get a letter in the post. Now, the Cruelty Man began to saw for all the neighbours around. He sawed a trailer load for Mrs. Owens and a beech in Kelly's Pound. He cut 4 ash trees for Patsy Tom and a hedge for Paddy Boyle. Brendy Rice got a dozen of birch, and so did Johnny Coyle. The Cruelty Man, he sawed away for the guts of a month or more. The neighbours all had plenty of firewood like never had before. So on a darkish night around Halloween, as the fires brightly burned, the chainsaw was left on wee Ned's doorstep, but the spade was never returned.
Oh no, lads, I tell you something. Eamon, Hector, I think you were lucky on Halloween night to get away like he did there and not have this sort of carry on.
Well, I'm wondering about this. I mean, they put the calf and then they get the chainsaw to the calf. I mean, was this real?
Just give it a rest, Hector. It's a story. It's a recitation. It's not real. At least I hope it's not. It better not be. I mean, if it was to be, this Ned fella would have serious questions to answer. I mean, that Mary Ann isn't any better now. Let's face it, she did suggest that they get the chainsaw and use it.
The animal rights people, they will be all over this. They will be all over them people.
Yeah, and the inspectors from the Department of Agriculture would also be hot in pursuit there.
Well, okay. Well, thankfully, it's just a recitation. So, look, there was no calves hurt. Can't say the same for Ned, though. I'd say Marianne might have given him a clip round the ear for losing the chainsaw. Okay, well, sure. We'd like to thank Raglan Road anyway for sending that in to us. We do appreciate it, and we hope our listeners liked it. And can I give a special word of thanks to Peter Keenan, who wrote it. Thank you, Peter, for that. Now, I think we'll turn our attention to football and to game week 12 and see what's been happening with our managers. The highest points were 129, while the average was 64 points. As we take a look at the league table, we see that there's no change in first place with Silver Stroke. Hector, would you like to kick off the review of the league table and tell us about their week?
The Silver Stroke, they got 97 points. They had no transfers. They had the Haaland as the captain, 32 points. Watkins got 6. Saka had 5 points. Ward-Prowse had 11. Salah had 16. Saliba had 9 points. Pedro Porro had 5 points. And their goalkeeper, Onana, had 8 points. There is 8 out of 11 players who were on the ball this week and getting the points, which I think is very good. They have good captain choice. They are now 26 points ahead of second place. When I look at this manager, I do not see any sign of any pressure. They are doing everything that they need to do. Everything is correct. And for me, Silver Stroke is on a silver streak.
Thank you for that there, Hector. And do you know something? Since you mentioned Silver Streak, there was a movie called Silver Streak. Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor were stars in that there. And if I recall correctly, it's a 1976 thriller comedy which features mostly on a train there. Of course, there is The Silver Streak, which is a 1934 movie. But anyways, back to the football. Eamon, up to second place from last week's third is Taiga, 81 points.
They had 2 transfers this week. Saka went out for 5 points. Salah came in for 16 points. Haaland was put out for 16 points and Watkins was brought in for 6 points. Their captain was Salah, 32 points. Watkins had 6. Saliba had 9 points. Tsimikas had 15 points. And Pedro Porro had 5 points. And Alvarez was also there. They got 5 points. One has to question the rationale for putting Haaland out. I can see what the manager is doing, working to get Salah in. But with the run of fixtures coming up, I would have thought it would suit Haaland more than Salah. Saka, I think, is another loss there. For me, I think it's the Donkey Fernandez. That's who I would have been shipping out. And that guy Morris up the front, he's not doing much either there. That's it. They got 81 points, and that is a good result for them. And this manager is now 3 weeks on the rise. It's been a good couple of weeks for Taiga, considering we had the troublesome times in game week 9 to the good times in game week 12.
Down to third from last week's second is Sakas' Steel, Hector, with 54 points.
They had the 1 transfer. The Madison, who is injured, was put out. They brought Fernandez in for 3 points. They then captained the Fernandez. He got 6 points. Watkins was there with 6 points. Salah had 16 points. Diaby had 6 points. Bowen had 8 points. The goalkeeper, Pope, he got 4 points. On the bench, Pedro Porro had 5 points and Tsimikas had 15 points there. Strange that they bring in the Fernandez. He was only put out in game week 10 and now he returned in game week 12. And let's face it, the 3 points that he got is not much of a repayment for that. And then there's more salt in the wound as the manager selected Fernandez to be the captain. That didn't work. It's surprising to see this manager slip up like this. They're usually very good. They're usually very steady-headed in that. Tsimikas was only brought in game week 11 and he benched him. Why not use him? I do not know. And that 12-point gap that had been between this manager and Silver Stroke is now 49 points. I think that our champ is not getting the results of the transfer activity, and the break until the 25th of November is going to give this manager some breathing space.
Up to fourth from last week's 5th is Arkham Avengers, 93 points. Eamon.
Well, the spoofer had 2 transfers. Madison went out because he's injured and Gordon came in for 2 points. Ektea went out for 1 point and Darwin came in for 5 points. Haaland was the captain, 32 points. Alvarez had 5 points. Darwin had 5. Salah had 16 points. Bowen had 8 points. Pedro Porro had 5 points. Saliba had 9 points. And their goalkeeper, Onana, had 8 points. Yet again, the spoofer is here to surprise us. It seems he can't put a foot wrong at this moment in time. Gordon's transfer didn't really have any big impact, but the Darwin move certainly was good. The captain choice, you can't fault it. It's a good selection there. And the forward lineup is very good, actually. The goalkeeper and defence are looking good also. And look, 8 out of the 11 players nabbed points. So you can't fault that. That's a good result there. This leaves the spoofer now 6 points behind Saka's steal. And when you look at this, it makes me wonder, could the unexpected be happening before our very eyes, where the spoofer breaks in to the top 3?
Also on the way up is What a Beauty 99, up to 5th from last week's 10th. And Hector, they got 96 points.
They had no transfers. Haaland was the captain for 32 points. Watkins got 6 points. Saka had 5 points. Ward-Prowse had 11 points. Salah had 16 points. Saliba had 9 points. Alexander-Arnold had 7 points. And they had Onana as the goalkeeper, and he got 8 points there. We think that the spoofer gave us a surprise, Eamon, but what about this? In last week, Eamon, you said that this manager, he'd be our top 10, and yet now he's in top 5. No transfer. Actually, this manager last do a transfer in game week 5. So he doing something right? There is the question.
He's certainly not doing anything right. I think he's living on the losses of other managers. But carry on there, Hector.
The captain selection is very good, and the midfield are doing well. Look, the goalkeeper and defence, they're solid there. The bench, though, is bust. There are 3 players there who are completely out. 2 of them are injured, and 1 of them have gone off on a season loan. That needs to be addressed here. 96 points, very good. And with these points, they have this now cushion of points. And all the managers below them now going to have to try and make up that difference of the points, as well as get more points to overtake this manager now. I make no prediction on this guy, but I think he'll not be able to maintain this sort of standard of results for too long. And I think let's not get too excited about this. It's a good result for him, but let's not be getting too excited.
Also up into 6th place from last week's 8 is Bamford Rejects with 75 points, Eamon.
No transfer this week. In fact, no transfer any week, if you ask me. And Haaland was the captain for 32 points. Watkins got 6 points. Eze got 6 points. Saka had 5 points. Alexander-Arnold had 7 points. Zinchenko came in with 10 points. Words fail me. This is the 3rd week that this guy is on the rise. Begs the question, what are the other managers doing that this guy has managed to get up to 6th? He's picked up points, but it's all down to a legacy team. It's not because he's doing anything active here, because the last time he was active is game week 5 there. I'm really nothing further to say about this. It's disappointing to see the like of this guy and What a Beauty 99 in 5th and 6th. But it is what it is, and maybe this is a wake-up call for some of the other managers out there.
Also on the way up into 7th from last week's 9th is Anal Town, 75 points, Hector.
They had 1 transfer. The Madison, as we say, he is injured, went out, and Kudos came in for 1 point. They also played a bench boost. Yes, that's right, they play a bench boost. Haaland was the captain for 32 points. Darwin came in for 5 points. Woodward had 6 points. Bowen had 8 points, and Diaby had 6 points. On the bench, Dela, he had 6 points. I'm not too sure about this transfer of Kudos. He worth 6.5 million. But the manager at the moment have 4.4 million in the bank. Surely they could have done better than Kudos. I think so. The bench boost, I think it's very unusual to see this being played, especially this early in the season. Like this, I think maybe they hit the button by accident. What did they get him? 9 points. Was it worth it? It certainly don't look like it from where I'm sitting here. The forwards, though, looking good. The defense and the goalkeeper looking a bit weak there, and but they're 6 weeks on the rise. They're doing something right. I think playing the bench boost is a short-term game, and for me, they should have held on to it and saved that for another game week.
Down to 8th from last week's 5th is Raglan Road with 47 points.
And they had 2 transfers. Van de Ven went out because he's injured, and Mikalenko came in for 9 points. Bruno Guimaraes went out, he didn't get anything. And Douglas Luiz came in for 2 points. The captain was Son for 4 points. Haaland had 16 points. Watkins had 6. Mikalenko, as I said, had 9 points. Look, the transfer from Mikalenko done well. I'm not sure about Douglas Luiz. That was a bit so-so move there. The captain choice let them down. I think with Maddison out, the Sonny Son might not be as effective there. Something to keep in mind, managers. This manager just seems to have lost faith in Haaland there. It's a poor week for their midfielders as well. And that fine run into the top 5 has now come to an abrupt end. But I think they will be back. Look at the Bamford reject and that What a Beauty 99. Those two managers, they won't be there in 5th and 6th for long. Also down to 8th place, it's a joint positioning this week from 6th. It finally got there. Hector, they got 66 points. They have one transfer. De Romero was put out because he is suspended, and Gui came in for 1 point. Saka was the captain, 10 points. Allen was 16 points. Alvarez had 5. Salah had 16, and Saliba had 9 points. I think that the transfer could have been a lot better. The captain choice was also a bit disastrous, especially when you look at Haaland is there and Salah is there. They could have done better than that. They needed to restore themselves as a challenging manager, but last week's result, coupled with this debacle this week, leaves me wondering whether they have the mettle. This is really a shot in the foot here, and they had the international break, luckily, to make a recovery and get themselves back here.
Up to 10th from last week's 11th is Blightsome squad with 77 points. Eamon.
Blightsome had one transfer. Romero went out, he's suspended. They also brought in Mikalenko for 9 points. Their captain was Watkins, who got 12 points. Alvarez had 5 points. Haaland had 16. Salah was there with 16. Ward-Prowse had 11. And as I said, Mikalenko had 6 points. On the bench was Matip, another 5 points. Transfer-wise, it was a top-notch transfer. It was good to bring in Mikalenko there. There was no losing points there. Captain choice surely could have been better with Haaland, Salah, Ward-Prowse, even Mikalenko. They were knocking about with decent points there. Much better than Watkins. Watkins, for me, has a habit of blowing cold just when you don't need him to do it. This is what he's done here. But it's a good result following up on Gameweek 11. They're only 3 points behind, finally got there, and Raglan Road. And this week, we can look at this as another building block to Blightsome making a push for the top 5.
Up to 11th from last week's 12th is Lafayette Lions, 77 points, Hector.
They had one transfer. The Maddison is out, he's injured, and Sterling was brought in for 6 points. They went for Salah as the captain, 32 points. Darwin had 5, Watkins had 6, Alvarez had 5, Ward-Prowse had 11, and Saliba had 9 points. On the bench, the guy they transferred in, Sterling, who had 6 points. Nice transfer. JP, they did not take advantage of the player and the points he got there. The captain choice is very good. Plenty of points coming in from the forwards, and this result is getting them back on track, and they needed this comeback.
Up to 12th from last week's 13th is Toebuggers. They got 79 points. Eamon, is our former champ fighting back?
They had one transfer. Van de Ven went out and he's injured, of course. Gabriel came in for 2 points. Haaland was the captain, 32 points. Alvarez had 5 points. Watkins had 6 points. Saka had 5 points. Tsimikas had 15 points. And the goalkeeper, Onana, had 8 points. The transfer got 2 points. There's nothing more to be said about that. It is what it is. The captain choice was very good with Haaland. The forward line looks good. I like it. Areas in midfield and defence are looking a little bit weak. We're lacking there. However, it's good news for this manager. He's on the way up and starting to close the gap on a few of those managers who are ahead of him. So yes, I think it is a case that Toebuggers is fighting back now.
And down to 13th position from last week's 7th is AFC Genali, 48 points. Hector, what happened here now with this manager?
They had no transfer, and they had Maddison as the captain. And Maddison, as we know, he is injured. I move on. Vice captain was Alvarez, he got 10 points. Ward-Prowse, he picked up 11 points. Saka had 5 points, and Saliba had 9 points. On the bench is Haaland with 16 points. This is the manager who got lucky last week. And this week, they managed to shoot themselves in both feet, if you ask me. And they bogged themselves down in that sand that you were stuck in. I don't know what, it's fast sand or something like that. Oh, you mean quicksand? That is it, quicksand. Yeah, I saw it in a Western ones. So they are bogged down in the quicksand.
It's quicksand, not stand.
Yes, Eamon. So they are bogged down in the quicksand. Clearly, they took some notion to take Haaland, to put him on the bench, and put Maddison as captain. But Maddison was injured before this game week start. He's not coming back until January. Why would you captain an injured player? Why would you put Haaland, who is notably one of the best players in the Premier League, on the bench? This is trouble with a capital T. You could say that this week's managing of this team has certainly put a halt to this manager's gallop into the top 10. And with so many other managers now moving up, I think this manager is going to find it very hard to get back up. And they could be in real trouble stuck down here, especially when they're doing this.
There's no move in 14th position with Medinicus. Eamon, they got 72 points.
They had 2 transfers this week and they lost 4 points as a result of this. Now, they put Maddison out, who's injured, and they brought Bowen in, who got 8 points. They put Byrne out, who's injured, and they brought White in, who didn't get any points. Salah was the captain for 32 points. Alvarez was there with 5. Watkins got 6 points. Bowen had 8. Saka had 5 points. And the goalkeeper, Alisson Becker, had 7 points. I think it's pity to be losing the 4 points there, the transfer of White in, because he has an injury as well. So hopefully he'll recover from that and he might make up these 4 points. The captain choice, though, is very good, went for Salah. They're picking up a nice few points around the team there. And this result now puts them 13 points behind AFC Tunali. And I think next game week, they just keep doing what they have been doing. There's been no panic about Medinicus. Just, okay, they're moving along there. They're not making any great strides, but they're closing the gap. And it won't be long until they're going to get off the foot of this table here, because I wouldn't be surprised to see the Tinali clowns down here.
Well, thanks very much for that there, lads. It's always great to hear what you have to say about each manager as you talk about them there. And certainly, I don't think we've had so many managers moving up the table as we had this game week. There was a lot of activity there. But look, it's all good. It's nice to see it. And we wish our managers a very nice and peaceful international break. Now, over to you, Hector.
Thank you very much, host. But today, I welcome everybody onto the Hector's Hellos. I say hello to our listeners who are in Frankfurt-on-Main in Germany, to all our listeners in France, Spain, those of you who are listening in Italy, perhaps enjoying a little bit of pizza, to our listeners in Malta, in India, Japan. We go and say hello to everyone in New Zealand who is listening to us. We go across the Pacific and we arrive in Chile. We say hi to everybody there. And hello in Brazil. Hi, Mom. Hope you're doing well. Then we go up to Mexico and we say hello to everybody there. And then we go to Los Angeles and say hi to our listeners who are tuning in. Same to our listeners in New Orleans, New York, Florida. We have listeners in Oregon, Alaska. They're listening to us. Hello there. It could be very cold, but I'm here. They're there. And we have listeners in Montreal, Shetland Islands. We go across to England and we have our listener in Newcastle, Liverpool, Chester, Birmingham, Ipswich, Manchester and London. And then we come to Ireland. And I say big hello to our listeners in Dublin. This could be Damo. Hi, Damo, if you're listening. We have listeners in Louth, Waterford, Cork, Clare, Galway, Mayo, Longford, Cavan, and our listeners in Monaghan. I want to say just thanks to everyone for tuning in and listening to us, joining us. Thank you very much. And, you can always get in touch with me. Just send an email to Arkham Avengers FFPL@gmail.com. Bye, everyone.
And thank you very much for that, Hector. Eamon, Hector, I hope that you enjoy the rest of the week. It'll be great to chat to you on our next show. So mind yourselves and take care.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on the show and looking forward to the next show here.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Finally, to you, our listeners, thank you for joining us, and I hope that you will enjoy the coming days ahead. And we look forward to you joining us for the next show. All that remains for me to say is good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. We hope you stay well, stay safe, everywhere in the world. We'll be back. Slán.